And happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Navigate B2B. I'm your host. My name is Steve Ferreira, and I'm CEO of Ocean Audit, a global refund consultancy firm based in Weston, Connecticut. Yes, not Hartford, Connecticut anymore. We made the big move, although the house is still in construction. So right now I'm coming to you in as if a Where's Waldo type clip from New Bedford, Massachusetts, the studios of Groundworks, a co-working space here. Really fantastic place. It's interesting as I travel the country, the different locations where professionals live, work, and play. A great group here at Groundworks, and I thank them for hosting me these last 2 weeks. Me, as far as forward plans, I'll be joining my family for our 4th of July. They're down in beautiful Miami as my daughter continues to impress in rhythmic gymnastics down there, and we're really, really happy with all the kids' progress, as I'm sure you guys are happy with reuniting with your families, getting ready for the 4th of July. And so we definitely are excited about that big event. And speaking of another big event, Tim Dooner and I have some hot dogs and sausages that you can munch on before the 4th of July. We'll be doing a webinar sponsored by Ocean Audit on July 1st, the 10-minute big shift towards cost recovery in ocean freight. And I can't wait for you all to join on that one because unlike traditional webinars with its PowerPoints and, boring topics, this one is going to be really interactive between Dunes and myself. And we're going to show you from an import-export perspective how you can secure huge cost recoveries in this container getting period, and then use those refunds and recoveries for other corporate purposes, instead of your CFO continuing to look over your shoulder in terms of why the budget is busted. So the webinar is called They Gouge, You Gain. How about that for creativity? And it is Thursday, July 1st at 2 p.m. Registration information is on the FreightWaves webinar site. I guess go FreightWaves webinar, and you'll see my webinar with featuring myself and Tim Dooner. And you'll be able to also register through some links on LinkedIn. And we hope for a really good showing. Again, just watch for 10 minutes, and you'll have tremendous takeaways on how to fight back on rogue invoicing during this container getting period. Big news for Steve Ferreira, myself, and Navigating B2B. The book is on pre-order now at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Publishers Leaders Press and Simon & Schuster were talking big things. There's some talk, some hubbub that the book could hit #1 on the USA Today bestseller list. So pre-sale starts now. Book is released July 6th, and Navigating B2B is all about how to utilize your most, your biggest asset, which is not your network, but really your creativity. So we'll talk more about that, and maybe we'll do some fun things like book readings, and hopefully we'll do some author events around the country. And I'm so tickled pink because it couldn't be happening at a better time as we open up and have the opportunity for masterminds and book signings. It's going to be a great summer. Realizing, on the other hand, that my core role at Ocean Audit is as busy as ever, trying to help beneficial cargo owners overcome the burden of container getting and overcharged and overpaid ocean freight. I have a very great client, someone I feel, extremely just so thankful to have as a client. And we were talking, and the person asked me about, what can be done now, in terms of cost savings measures, or even just kind of measures to get cargo moving. Not even cost savings, right? Cost savings is that barn gate was open and that horse flew away. But what can be done to help a partnership between a BCO and a vendor to get additional space and space guarantees, and really to get cargo moving as it should be, right? Because the indications from my side of the fence are that it's still going to be a long, hot summer with lots of overbookings and continued state of containergeddon, right, where we're frozen in our footsteps in terms of where the rates are and the efficiency of the supply chain networks for most beneficial cargo owners. But one opportunity is a new one, and one that has not been considered. And I started to think about this because I like to think about outside the box ideas. And one is to pay it forward, excuse me. And what I mean by that is, instead of future-based, performance-based contracting, and I'm coming up with a concept of a forward annuity for ocean freight. And the way that would work in theory, it's a pretty simple concept. And I don't mean to imply it's playing with wooden nickels. Some people might think that when they hear my idea. But the idea is this. Many major BCOs and smaller BCOs, and pardon me, I don't mean the difference between major and minor. I'm talking about in terms of TEU count that clients have. A client might have 500 containers all the way up to 500,000 containers that I work with. But the idea is this. You take your ocean freight refund, let's say it's $200,000, $400,000, $800,000. What if you don't get it back? What if you don't redeem it? But instead, what if you use it as a forward annuity, sort of like a supercharged performance guarantee? The vendors have that money, and so you might say, well, what's the incentive for them to help me with space since they already have the money? But the advantage is that they don't have to refund the sins of their past, the overcharges that I identify. So you're basically creating, or your auditors, if you use somebody else other than myself. But the advantage is you're data mining, or you're deep drilling a new pool of resource, where instead of going and buying a futures contract, you are the futures contract. So it's a bold idea, and I really would like to explore that. And maybe what we can do is expand upon that a little bit during our July 1st webinar, because I think that a forward annuity might be the right incentive for the right vendor for you as a BCO to continue to move your cargo in a way that either guarantees space, or maybe more importantly, distinguishes between the confusing monikers of FAK premium, fixed premium, and so on and so forth, right? We're seeing more of a consolidation in terms of, it's almost like, I remember when I was 9-10 years old, my parents loved to go to these auctions, and the guy would, I don't know, you'd bid for one of these velvet paintings, that they would put in their, above the bar in the basement, and the guy's, blah, 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 he's bidding out what the amounts are. And, auctioning has always been an interesting, genre, right, for me. And, you saw that facilitate in very successful businesses like eBay, and even to some extent Airbnb, where, you can kind of haggle a little bit on the pricing. But the opportunity to use historic dead money to fund new events is somewhat strategic, because then you can kind of set your own standards. Okay, we're going to use this pool of 300,000, 150,000 is for guaranteed space, 150,000 is for premium space, and you can kind of bid it up and down, and that way kind of fit in the number of containers that you need to facilitate for your supply chain. Because one of the things that came up as a result of this conversation is the inventory levels are just so still pitifully low. And I was looking yesterday in preparation for today's show. By the way, you're watching Navigate B2B on FreightWaves TV. I'm your host, Steve Ferreira, CEO of Ocean Audit, a global ocean freight refund consultancy in Weston, Connecticut. I have to remember where I live. And when I look at the inventory levels, I looked at Amazon yesterday. Right, Amazon had a movement of 75 containers, and this is pretty much in the last 24 hours, 48 hours. So pretty much real time as I speak to you here on Friday at 2:10 p.m. The thing that it was interesting about Amazon, right, is that it's very, very, very difficult to get a bill of lading with, let's say 10 or more containers right now because of space concerns. But when I hyper-analyzed the Amazon move, I found it fascinating that the container numbers were sequential. For example, TRLU 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then TRLU 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it dawned on me, and again, this is just hypothetical, I'm just making those numbers up, but I think you follow my point. It dawned on me that, what Amazon has done in that case to facilitate this move of 74 containers of this furniture, it was actually this bookcase type entity, is they either went out and secured shipper-owned containers, right, not the carrier containers, or what Amazon might have done is they might have leveraged their Amazon Logistics NVO division and in a deal with Textainer or Triton, one of the container lessors, made some kind of blanket deal, which gives them the ability to use some of the lease containers that they might have to facilitate for their Amazon Logistics program for Amazon's own Amazon.com program, right? I just want to make sure you guys understand the distinct differences between their FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon, small China division, which is Amazon Logistics, and then their traditional procurement division, Amazon.com, that buys from Asia vendors. So starting to see these sequential container numbers. And one of the issues is the fact that, container manufacturing is very tightly controlled. And in China, I believe there are 3 or 4 conglomerates that make, X percent of the majority of the containers. So I think it's very important that when these containers go off into Amazon ethosphere and others ethospheres, that obviously the inventory of SOC, shipper-owned containers, or just normal containers is always going to hit a plateau at some point, right? Because it only makes sense. Only so many can be manufactured in a given day. And I think that is part of the cycle that is not being picked up by the media, is that the container production, right now, I'm trying to think, Triton and Textainer stocks are at all-time high. They're very much in play right now by speculators that there'll be additional mergers. There was recently a merger, I believe, with CAI Container by Mitsubishi, excuse me, a tough one to say, Japanese trading company. And so it seems that, we kind of hit a plateau. And I don't mean this in the sense that the container rates on charter ships are starting to go down. Not at all. They continue to rise. But you remember in some of my previous talks, we talked about how high the Harper Peterson, container charter index is. Well, now we're starting to see a rise in the container leasing indices as well. And some vendors, some Wall Street investors and pundits believe that the leasing companies are the next great thing out there on the investment horizon. And again, not that the Zims and the Matsons and the Navios maritime stocks have diminished, not at all. It's just that right now there's a consolidation of these maritime stocks, and a lot of them are led now by containers. There's a company called ATCO, ATCO, which is a division of, which is the holding company for C-SPAN, which has, one of the biggest order books on container ships in the world. And they just signed, I believe, 17 ships at over $40,000 a day, which they leased out to the VOCCs like the Maersks or the CMA or the Hapags or the Hyundais of the world. So big money continues to be made there, but at the sacrificial lamb level of the BCO, kind of getting the shaft at the end. And I started to think about the show today, and just some of the things that I try to bring to you guys that you don't see in the newspapers or in the press. For example, one of the biggest container crane manufacturers has just delivered a couple cranes, one to Boston and one to Seattle. Now, I haven't seen much press about that, but that tells me obviously that Seattle is starting to have more of that issue on choke points, just like Oakland had, and I think it's good that we have these progressive ports like Boston, like Seattle, that are adding or refining their container crane capacity or capabilities to handle, obviously, container get and overflow. Now, Boston's an unusual one because, Boston is more of a European inbound port. But I think nonetheless, we're starting to see, enhanced traffic from Europe as well. And of course, being proactive on container cranes and production, how much production you can get out of a crane is going to have an overall improvement on gate times and cycling in and out of the container terminal, and hopefully doing two-way moves where the truck's coming in and picking up, dropping off a load and taking a load with them. I know that's something that the Port of LA and Long Beach has tried to incentivize the community with on these two-way hauls. The other big thing that I want to talk to you guys about is that as I start to look at the landscape around me, within beneficial cargo owners, within importers and exporters, and even within the ocean vendors themselves, this game of musical chairs, it seems that there's a great demand for, I don't want to say, plucking a great employee from one vendor and trying to, solicit them to your company. But I think I see a lot of that happening around me, as I do a lot of newcomers that don't have the so-called ocean chops or supply chain chops meaning, skills, and they're forced to kind of do heavy OJT. And unfortunately, it's one of these things where, you sit with somebody for a day and then you're kind of on your own. So I'm starting to see that landscape in a lot of beneficial cargo owners, pardon me, right now. And certainly that can help the situation, as it cannot with the same type of shifts at the ocean freight of NVOCCs, freight forwarders, and direct carriers. We see a lot of newcomers on the ocean freight claims and refunds side on the carriers, and that in turn really slows the production down and the identification of any kind of recoveries due back to the BCO, beneficial cargo owner. And so I think that, and again, not that it dovetails nicely into what Tim Dooner and I are doing on July 1st, but having an escape hatch, an escape room for the high charges of container-geddon, and getting a lot of that offset or refunded is something I think most CFOs, controllers, VPs of supply chain finance, and logistics leaders want to have under their name, right? They want to be considered the maverick that does that. And just because the incumbent might have gone with a system that doesn't control the cost very well, doesn't mean that the current newcomers to the role are not thinking outside the box, because they're younger, they're smarter, they're more adept with technology. And I think that on the sum of the whole, it's a great thing that we're seeing more new people from all walks of life come into logistics and supply chain, and especially ocean freight, right? But on the other hand, there's a very heavy, very steep curve in terms of how that indoctrination to our industry has to take place. And so it's fantastic that we have great entities like FreightWaves and all the programming, terrific hosts on the shows to help everyone navigate all the individual parts of the supply chain. I just happen to be on the ocean freight side. So I think in summary of this first half of the show, I'm starting to think about, everyone knows I love movies, right? So I always use lines from movies, and The Martian is one of my favorite movies, and I think that there's a line in there where they're going back to Mars to save the astronaut, and they say, if it's mission critical, we die, because they're trying to make a major decision in terms of shifting their spaceship to go pick up the guy they left on Mars. So if it's mission critical, I think that's a key phrase here. And I'm starting to think how to use that in ocean. And I think if it's mission critical right now, you have to start thinking about freight forwarder use, NVOCC use, and not only that, but mission critical ways to think outside the box. And I started to put this together as part of the prep today. And I look at mission critical as almost like a secret mission. And I think one of the things that we want to talk about, I put this slide together, is this is a really cool thing that Expeditors and the BCO did. There's a German brewery where Expeditors arranged 36 40-foot standard containers onto basically a vessel ship that holds cars and tractors and agricultural, combines and all that good stuff. But there's equally a number of Volkswagen cars on this ship, as there are 40-foot containers of brewery equipment. And this is an interesting one because it went from Germany to San Diego, and they got 36 containers, probably on wheels, right, onto the ship. Now, the thing again about this is brilliant, is that this is the sequential SOC containers again, where they were able to go out and contract with a German container lessor and made the move. Now, you say that's okay, well, that's a niche move for Germany, but Steve, what about these reconnaissance missions that might be from Asia? Well, this is a new find. I actually found this last night about 11 o'clock, had my artist, thank you, Sharif, put this together for me, at 3 a.m. And this is a really cool example of thinking outside the box and almost a forward annuity type movement. And I'll explain why. There are a series of BBC vessels. The BBC Finland is the vessel that you're looking at on the screen. She also has, I believe, a sister ship. And so there's a series of these vessels that Schenker has commandeered, reconnaissance commandeered. Anyway, I cracked myself up. And hats off to Schenker, because this ship, look how efficient this worked for them. This ship has a 675 TEU capacity, which means that in theory, it only holds 387 40-foot containers. Now, I might be off on my count a little bit, not by much, but they got 300 containers from Vietnam to San Diego for the energy giant Fluence, which is a division of Siemens, the German energy, the German conglomerate. And I think this is really big news, because it's these multi-purpose ships in the 300 to 1,000 TEU range that I believe make it mission critical to start working with these types of vendors. Now, we can take the spotlight off on that, and we can start to think about, well, how do you pay it forward, right? Well, I think one of the reasons why these moves work so successfully is you compensate the vendor for the full voyage up front, right? It's easy. Okay, so let's try to do the math. So let's say we have the 300 containers, and that's at 20,000 a container. What is that, 6 million? Yeah, I think that's 6 million. So you pay the 6 million. Now, what if Fluence and Siemens had a refund of 1.1 million, right? So they take the 1.1 million, deduct that, and then they pay a cash of 4.9 million. So they use the forward annuity of the historic refunds rather than get the refund back to help compensate for the journey, and maybe even discount that down a little bit, because if you kind of contemplate the cost of money, although money's cheap, you can say, hey, you held our refund for 3 years or 4 years or even 5 years, and there should be some discounting on that. So I think and I'm not suggesting at all that I have any more insight in terms of how this voyage was paid for. However, I do know for sure that some of the multi-purpose vehicles, multi-purpose vessels that are in play these last few months, I know that some of the reasons why they were so successful is the full voyage costs were paid in advance, right? And that's more of a new theory. We start to look at, how the freight forwarder leases these vessels, right? A wet lease or a dry lease. Wet lease includes the fleet. The crew, the fuel, all port costs. Dry lease means that you get the vessel, and then you have to crew it and fuel it and have all the add-ons yourself. Many forwarders are getting the wet lease, right? Because they don't have really the expertise to crew a ship. And so that's an expensive proposition, and is still making great coin, great money doing it. And that's why I believe that boutique multi-purpose vessels are definitely something that you want to engage with in your correspondence with freight forwarders. Because, I could be dead wrong, but I think there's no way, the typical importer is getting 15, 20 containers, on a bill of lading or split on a bill of lading, right? It's got to be, that's one of the reasons why the shipment size, the global shipment size, has actually gone down versus 2019. So the number of containers on an invoice is actually lower today than it was 2 years ago. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but that is just because of the reasons of the scarcity of equipment, obviously the blank sailings, and obviously the cargo mix, and many BCOs spreading the wealth, so to speak, over more and multiple vendors that they can. But I don't think that adding vendors is the solution for the space and rate issue. I believe that the solution is clearly in front of us in these secret mission critical initiatives. And certainly I can, if any of my friends and fans want more information on maybe a little bit more insight on who to get referred to, I'd be glad to help you. I'm neutral. I don't receive any compensation from any vendor. As I said, Ocean Audit is a total neutral entity. My role is to get you, the importer and exporter, cash refunds. What you do with those refunds is up to you. I am suggesting that maybe one opportunity is to press it, so to speak, in Las Vegas betting terms, and move that refund to a place where it allows the vendor to go out and contract a multi-purpose vessel just for you. Now, if you think about it, I have numerous examples of those multi-purpose vessels, anywhere from 100 TEUs to even the 30 TEUs or 30 FEUs that we saw for the Expeditors move from Germany. So don't think that you're too small to not participate or even cooperatively join in with another importer on a multi-purpose vessel. And that's a whole different story that we don't have time for today. But certainly I invite my audience to reach out to me at Steve Ferreira at LinkedIn, or stevef@oceanaudit.com, or just my direct, as I said, my direct profile on LinkedIn if you're already connected with me, and address any questions that you have like that. And I think that with regards to those issues, so we have a lot coming up. We have the July 1st webinar, They Gouge, You Gain. Guarantee, actually, of anyone that watches the webinar, that most likely I've already got hardwired in my system a 4- and 5-figure refund. So if you watch it on July 1st and you call me on July 2nd, I'll be able to provide you a complimentary refund with my courtesy, no fee, no obligation. I'm really glad that we had the chance to talk today. You've been watching Navigate B2B with Steve Ferreira, my new book, Navigating B2B, pre-sale on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Look for it everywhere. And I'll see you during next week's show. Thanks, and have a great week. I love you guys.